Puerto Rico has been hot. I mean, really hot. The kind of hot where you leave your house, walk 10 steps, and immediately start questioning every decision you've ever made. Everybody's looking for the same thing. An iced coffee, a cold medalla, a piragua, a limber, or a frozen piña colada. You see, when I was a little kid, we used to warm it with our hands, and then it came out. Beautiful, huh? Actually, I'm going to try something today. I'm going to see if I can finish this limber before it melts, while telling you one of the most unbelievable stories in Puerto Rican history. Wish me luck. Because here's something I bet you've never stopped to think about. There was a time when Puerto Rico had never seen ice. No cube. Not one block. Nothing. No piraguas. No limbers. No coconut ice cream. No frozen cocktails. No piña coladas. Nothing. And the story of how frozen water first arrived on this island involves a stubborn businessman from Boston, the end of a civil war in Spain, a celebration inside the Teatro Tapia in San Juan, 4 giant wooden crates, a marching band, and one little Puerto Rican boy who would grow up to become one of our greatest writers ever, Alejandro Tapia y Rivera. And thanks to him, we know exactly what happened, because sometimes history isn't about kings or presidents or wars. Sometimes history is about the first time an entire island tasted something cold. Happy Sunday, everybody, and welcome back to another great episode of Chronicles and Cocktails. I'm Josue, the spirited historian. And if you've been in this community for a while now, you know Chronicles and Cocktails is where every cocktail has a story, and every story deserves a great cocktail. And technically today we're not actually making a cocktail, or we are, but this episode doesn't have an actual cocktail segment, because the cocktail is going to be integrated, embedded in the episode. And if this is your first visit, I'm really glad you're here. Every week, we explore the stories that shaped Puerto Rico. Its people, its traditions, its food, its cocktails, and the connections that tie our island to the rest of the world. If that sounds like your kind of history, I'd love you to subscribe to the channel. And if you would like to help support the channel, the research behind these episodes, consider becoming a member or leaving a super thanks. That allows me to keep buying books, traveling for the show, visiting archives, and telling these stories the way they deserve to be told. Last episode, we traveled back to the American Revolutionary War and discovered how Puerto Rico quietly helped shape the birth of the United States. Today, we're staying connected to America, but instead of soldiers, our story begins with Boston. Think about your day. Really. How many times do you use ice? For coffee, water, soft drinks, cocktails, coolers, ice cream, frozen desserts? Probably a dozen times. Now, imagine living your entire life without ever seeing it. Not once. That's how every Puerto Rican lived before 1839. Cold drinks simply weren't part of life. Neither were frozen desserts. Even something as simple as putting ice in a glass of water was impossible, and Puerto Rico wasn't unique. For thousands of years, Most people on Earth lived exactly the same way. Ice wasn't common, it was a luxury. The ancient Egyptians figured out ways to cool water during cold desert nights. The Persians built incredible underground ice houses called jakchals or jakchals. Probably that's not the pronunciation. Jakchals. That could preserve ice even in the middle of the desert. The Romans carried snow down from the Alps to cool wine for wealthy families. But after the Roman Empire collapsed, Europe largely lost the technology. For centuries, cold remained something reserved for kings, emperors, and the wealthy. Then, something happened. A young man from Boston looked at a frozen pond and saw not winter, but an opportunity. I've been fortunate enough to visit Boston several times. Every time I go, I'm reminded that history is everywhere. The Freedom Trail, old churches, colonial buildings, and during winter, frozen ponds. In the early 1800s, those frozen ponds caught the attention of a young Boston merchant named Frederick Tudor, or Tudor, or Tudor. I don't know. He had an idea so ridiculous that almost everybody laughed at him. He asked a simple question. Listen to this. What if I cut giant blocks of ice from frozen lakes in Massachusetts, loaded them onto ships, and sold them to people in the Caribbean? I mean, how crazy is that, no? Think about that. Shipping frozen water to tropical islands using wooden sailing ships. I mean, he had no refrigeration. He had no engines. He had no electricity. Nothing. This was early 1800s. So everybody thought he had lost his mind. I mean, seriously, if your friend in the 1800s tells you, look, I'm going to cut ice from the ponds of Boston or Massachusetts, put them in a boat, travel a long way to the Caribbean. I mean, really, what would you think? The ship owners laughed, of course. The merchants laughed. His friends laughed. I mean, they weren't good friends. Have a friend that we can brainstorm into ideas, and we truly believe that the other can actually do it. I mean, because we can. The banks certainly weren't lining up to finance frozen water, but Tudor didn't care. I mean, he didn't. And that's really cool. In 1806, look, 1806, this is the same year that the definition of a cocktail ever appeared on print. I mean, coincidence? He filled a ship with nearly 80 tons of natural New England ice, packed the cargo in pine sawdust, and sailed to Martinique from Boston. I mean, how far is Martinique in relation to Boston? I mean, picture it. I mean, it's right here. Look at it. This is how far it is. The trip was a financial disaster. The ice survived, but the business almost didn't. People didn't understand why anyone would pay for frozen water. The cargo melted, while customers refused to buy it. This is already melting. And Tudor lost money, accumulated enormous debts, and even spent time in prison because of them. Most people would have quit. He became even more determined. Instead of trying to convince people with advertisements, he convinced them with experience. He invited listen, I mean, because great minds work very similar. He convinced them with experience. He invited influential people to dinner, served them chilled wine, offered drinks over ice, showed restaurants how to make ice cream. He demonstrated to doctors how ice could reduce fever. Once people experience ice, They couldn't live without it. I don't know, but this story reminds me of Huey P. Long. He was a governor from Louisiana. I think I have his book. I do. I don't think I do. Well, the book. Here it is. Huey P. Long. I mean, this guy, I lived in New Orleans for 10 years. And when I went to the University of New Orleans, we had to take Louisiana history, right? So this guy's one of my favorite politicians ever because, I might not have agreed with everything he stood for, but this dude wanted to pave the roads of Louisiana. And the people were saying, we don't need paved roads. And definitely we don't want to pay for the taxes to pave the roads. So guess what he did? He took the muddiest roads and he paved parts of it. So you would be driving, right, in mud. Then, like maybe, I don't know, a mile was nicely, freshly paved. And then you were so comfortable, right? And all of a sudden, boom, you fell on muddy road again. Your cars got stuck. Your horses got stuck. Eventually, he was the one who started paving all the roads. Huey P. Long. I know it's not part of the story, but it just reminded me that these people are actually really, really interesting because they get things done. They definitely get things done. This is melting. So I gotta hurry up. Obviously it solved the problem they didn't even know they had. Little by little, Boston ice began reaching Havana and the Caribbean, Europe, India, and ports throughout the Atlantic world. Frederick Tudor became so successful, history remembers him as the Ice King. Now, remember him, because while Tudor was transforming frozen ponds into an international business, Puerto Rico had absolutely no idea that his idea was about to change the island forever. You know, one thing you probably notice if you've watched this channel for a while, I like books. Not because they make me look smarter, although I certainly don't mind. I like books because every once in a while, one of them completely changes the way I look at history. This one did exactly that. Alejandro Tapia y Rivera, one of Puerto Rico's greatest writers, left us something extraordinary. He didn't simply write history, he remembered it. He was there, he was just a boy, and because of him, we know exactly how Puerto Rico first met ice. So let's go back to 1839. Spain had just emerged from one of the bloodiest conflicts in the 19th century, the First Carlist War. It had lasted 7 years, dividing families, towns, and the Spanish nation itself. Finally, on August 31st, 1839, two generals, Baldomero Espartero and Rafael Maroto, signed what became known as the Convenio de Vergara. It didn't solve every political problem in Spain, but it effectively brought the war to an end. And because Puerto Rico was part of Spain, the islands celebrated. There were illuminations, festivities, official ceremonies, and according to Tapia, the Basque community of San Juan, Los Vizcaínos, decided to organize a spectacular dance at the theater. Today, we know that building as the Teatro Tapia, which bears the name of Alejandro Tapia y Rivera. How cool was that? Now, here's where the story becomes incredible. To impress guests, the organizers announced that they would serve sorbete, frozen sorbet. Imagine hearing that announcement in Puerto Rico in 1839. I mean, seriously. Today, we'd probably shrug and ask what flavor. Back then, people must have wondered, frozen, how? Because remember, there wasn't a single piece of ice on the island. Not one. The organizers had ordered it from the United States, with the shipment passing through St. Thomas, the great commercial hub of the Eastern Caribbean. Now, here's something interesting. Alejandro Tapia never mentions Frederick Tudor by name, but historians know that by 1839, virtually all commercial ice entering the Caribbean from New England moved through the trade network created by Frederick Tudor, the Ice King. So while we can't say with absolute certainty those 4 crates came directly from Tudor himself, the evidence strongly suggests they were part of the revolutionary ice trade he pioneered. I love that connection. I mean, seriously, because while Boston was laughing at Tudor, Puerto Rico had no idea his frozen cargo was on its way. But then something goes wrong. Oh, of course. The ship is late. I mean, that's so Puerto Rico. Really late. Tapia tells us that the people started making fun of the organizers. Imagine promising everybody the greatest party that San Juan has ever seen. And don't worry, we're serving frozen dessert. Except there's no ice. A few hours pass. No ship. More jokes. More laughter. The organizers must have been panicking. I mean, imagine that. My wife is a wedding and event coordinator, and I've worked events in Puerto Rico, I mean, since probably 2005, and someone is always late, and that's a panicking situation. And especially back then, I mean, think about it. No phones, no emails, no tracking number, no way of knowing where the ship was. All they could do was wait. Then, finally, the ship appears. And on board are 4 enormous wooden crates. Just picture that. Not gold, not silver, not weapons, not silk. Frozen water. Packed in sawdust. Shipped hundreds of miles across the Atlantic world, just so people in Puerto Rico could taste something cold in a party, of course. Now, this is my favorite part. According to Tapia, they didn't quietly unload the crates. No, they sent a marching band to the docks. Yes, we know how to party. Can you imagine that? A parade for ice. The musicians escort the shipment through the streets of San Juan, all the way to the theater. People stop. They watch. Some probably think the whole thing is ridiculous. Others are simply curious. What could possibly be inside those mysterious wooden boxes that deserves its own parade? If I had been living in San Juan in 1839, I would have followed that band all the way to the theater. Now, here's where the story becomes personal. Tapia tells us he was still a child, too young to attend the elegant dance. Imagine how disappointed he must have been. Everybody's talking about this magical frozen dessert. And your parents say, no, you are staying home. But kids have always been kids. One of Tapia's friends managed to get close while the crates were being opened and secretly stole a little piece of ice. Not candy, not money, ice. They had never seen anything like it before. Can you imagine holding something that disappeared in your hand? Yeah, this thing is already melting. And that got me thinking. Those first 4 crates, they melted too. But what they left behind never melted. Because after that night, Puerto Rico changed. Alejandro Tapia tells us that before long, ice cream shops began opening because they started mixing the ice with tropical fruits and making sorbet. So he says that many houses in San Juan were selling these icy treats late in the evening. Because there were so many, competitions lowered prices. Doctors recommended ice for treating fevers and preserving food. Eventually, Puerto Rico even began manufacturing its own ice. One shipment, 4 wooden crates. One unforgettable night at Teatro Tapia, which back then it wasn't called the Teatro Tapia. I mean, Alejandro Tapia y Rivera was just a little boy. It was the Coliseo Municipal. And an entire island began to fall in love with cold. Now, here's the question. What exactly did Puerto Ricans do with it? Oh, we got creative. You know, I think this is where Puerto Rico really shines. Because we didn't invent ice. We didn't invent refrigeration. We didn't even invent frozen desserts. But once ice cream became part of everyday life, we did what Puerto Ricans always seem to do. We made it ours. We gave it our flavors, our fruits, our music, our personality, our summers. And little by little, ice stopped being a luxury and it became part of being Puerto Rican.
¿De qué sabores tiene?
Coco, parcha y rainbow.
Dame uno de coco, 3.
Gracias, mi príncipe.
Gracias. Ice cream. Coconut, my favorite flavor. A little bit creamy. But this is another thing you can have in Puerto Rico without ice. I think you're seeing a pattern here. Coconut.
Now, listen carefully. That little bell, I think every Puerto Rican knows what that sound is. No matter if you're 5 years old or 70 years old, which I'm neither. You hear that bell and suddenly you're a kid again. For generations, ice cream didn't wait for you. It came looking for you. De heladero, la guaguita de helado. And in the plazas, there's a little cart. And the heladero pushes the cart through the neighborhoods, through the plazas, through baseball parks, schoolyards. And what's fascinating is that Alejandro Tapia himself tells us that after the arrival of ice cream shops quickly began appearing. Families started making ice cream at home. Competition lowered the prices, like we mentioned before. Something that had once amazed the wealthy became part of everyday Puerto Rican life. Think about that. Those little carts, the coconut ice cream, the bell, all trace their roots to those first 4 crates of ice. And honestly, I don't think history gets much sweeter than that.
Está abierto. ¿Cuánto te da?
Yo tengo agua, no te preocupes. Ok, está bien.
A very nice piragua.
Good news.
So of course,
Cayó de gratis.
without the ice,
Ella dijo que
we wouldn't have
me
piraguas.
lo había dejado allí, pero que yo no me lo había tomado.
And I'm enjoying this one in Rincón, Puerto Rico.
Honestly, I don't care how old I get. If I hear somebody scraping one of these, I'm stopping. There's something hypnotic about it. The giant block of ice, the metal scraper, the little cone, the colorful syrups. It's almost like watching a craftsman at work. Now, Puerto Rico didn't invent shaved ice. Cultures all over the world have their own version. I mean, in New Orleans, they call it snowballs. Japan has kakigori. Hawaii has shaved ice. Mexico has raspados. But Puerto Rico gave the Caribbean the piragua. And somehow, ours feels different. Maybe it's the tropical syrups. Maybe it's eating one while standing in the plaza, or on the beach, or a little league practice. Maybe it's simply nostalgia. Without ice, none of these happens. No piragüero, no giant ice block, no colorful afternoons in the plaza. No little kid asking, Mami, comprame una piragua. That's history too. You know, if the piragua belongs in the plaza, the next frozen treat belongs to the neighborhood and to grandmothers. This is Puerto Rico. I have to admit, this might be one of my favorite frozen treats in Puerto Rico, but mostly because it reminds me of my childhood. I remember that there was always a lady who sold limbers everywhere, in every neighborhood. I think that happened all over Puerto Rico, but where I grew up, it feels home, you know? So every time I have a limber, which is not as often as I used to, well, I'm Gen X, so, you know, I have to watch my sugar, right? But it brings me back to my neighborhood, to my barrio. All the kids just walk into the lady's house and ask him, say un limber le que tiene, you know, like what flavors do you have? I mean, one of my favorite flavors, especially for ice cream piraguas and limbers, is coconut. So I always had coconut. Also, I liked frambuesa and blueberry, but my all-time favorite is coconut ice cream. And it just reminds me of my friends, of the other kids that I used to grow up with, you know. Where does the name Limber come from? You've probably heard the Charles Lindbergh story, and this is interesting. The famous aviator visits Puerto Rico in 1928 aboard the Spirit of St. Louis. I mean, that's really cool. People supposedly offered him a frozen treat. He asked what it's called. Nobody knows. So they named this after him. It's a great story, and it has become part of Puerto Rican folklore, right? But while researching this episode, that's why it's so important to research, I came across something even more interesting. According to the municipality of San Germán, a local entrepreneur named Daniel Nadal Crespo decided to market his frozen treats under a new name, inspired by Charles Lindbergh. So, yes, the Charles Lindbergh story is still there, but the way it happened, differently. So what Daniel Nadal Crespo did was he shortened Charles' surname, and maybe he didn't shorten it on purpose. Like Charles is Lindbergh, and this is a Limber. So it's written different because we pronounce it different, right? In December of 1929, this is 100 years later, Daniel registered a trademark. Whether that's the exact moment the word spread across Puerto Rico, historians still debate. But what we know is that the name stayed. Today, you say Limber anywhere on the island, and everybody knows exactly what you mean. And once again, without ice, this doesn't exist. No freezer, no neighborhood ventanilla, no lady selling homemade limbers from her kitchen window, no coconut, no tamarind, no parcha, no cream cheese limber, no summer memories. Sometimes history tastes like childhood. Now, there's one frozen Puerto Rican creation that conquered the entire world. And I think it's the perfect way to end today's story. Got it. The Puerto Rico Rum Cyclopedia. Now, our second book today, or third if you count Huey P. Long. I told you, I like books. And not because they make me look smart, like I said, but because they let other people do the talking. This one is Puerto Rico Rum Cyclopedia by Federico Jose Hernandez. If you've never seen it, it's an incredible source on the history of Puerto Rican rum. And while preparing today's episode, I realized something. The Piña Colada isn't just another cocktail. It's actually the final chapter of today's story. Because before we can have the world's most famous tropical cocktail, we first needed ice. Most people know the Piña Colada. Fewer people know its history, and even fewer know that there are multiple claims about who invented it. The Caribe Hilton, Barrachina Restaurant, Ramon Monchito Marrero, Ricardo Garcia, each has its supporters. And honestly, that's an entire episode by itself, which I've been promising that it's gonna come out, and it will, although I've featured the Piña Colada in many of our episodes, including the last episode about how Puerto Ricans helped in the American Revolution. Go check it out. But here's something everybody agrees on. Without commercial ice, without refrigeration, without the ability to crush and blend ice, there is no frozen Piña Colada. I mean, really, think about it. The texture, the experience, the thing that makes the drink unforgettable isn't just the rum. It isn't just the pineapple. It isn't just the cream of coconut. It is frozen water. It's ice. And isn't that amazing? One of Puerto Rico's greatest ambassadors to the world owes its existence to 4 wooden crates that arrived almost 2 centuries earlier. History has funny ways of connecting things. More liquidy than anything else. So, when people ask me why I love history, this is exactly why. History isn't always hiding inside battlefields or government buildings or the office of governors. Actually, sometimes they hide it, right? Sometimes it's hidden inside the ordinary things we stop noticing, like an ice cube, like a piragua, like a limber, like the bell of an ice cream cart, like a piña colada on a hot afternoon. Sometimes history isn't about what arrived, it's about what became possible. After it arrived, that's the real story. Frederick Tudor didn't come to Puerto Rico to invent the piña colada. He didn't come here to think about piraguas or limbers or coconut ice cream or whatever frozen drink you can imagine. He simply believed the frozen water belonged in the Caribbean because it's hot. So it's good for you to drink something cold. People laughed. Then people tasted it. And once they did, there was no going back. Alejandro Tapia y Rivera remembered those 4 crates because he understood something most people didn't. He wasn't just watching the arrival of ice, he was watching change. I mean, that's a true revolution. Ice revolutionized our way of life. And nearly 200 years later, here we are, still enjoying the results. Now I'm drinking the juice, not biting the actual ice. I mean, how long has it been since you had a limber? And tell me something. If you've never been to Puerto Rico and you're from the mainland US, Canada, Europe, I don't know, Argentina, Asia, Africa, wherever, have you had a similar type of treat before? Or what's the version of the limber in your country? Or the version of the piragua? And I think my goal to see if the limber lasted the whole episode, well, I think it's on point. Because I told you I tried to finish it before it completely melted, and it's not 100% melted. So it looks like we both won. Salud. So the next time you order a piragua, buy a limber from a neighborhood window, hear the bell of an ice cream cart, or blend a piña colada, remember, none of those traditions were inevitable. They all began with a crazy idea. A frozen lake outside Boston, a ship crossing the Atlantic, 4 wooden crates, a marching band in Old San Juan. I mean, really. And one curious little boy who never forgot the day Puerto Rico tasted cold. All right then. So, if you've enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe. Share this episode with someone who loves Puerto Rico or someone who thinks history is boring. No. I have a feeling this episode might change their mind. And I want to thank the channel members. You make research-heavy episodes like this possible. And I also want to thank Vesta Fresh from Brooklyn, New York, Dominican Power, who sent me a text through Instagram telling me my logo was completely wrong, because instead of saying Chronicles and Cocktails, I had it saying Chronicles and Chronicles. I made the logo myself. It's been like that for I don't know how many months. I mean, really, what the heck happened to me? And nobody else noticed? Really? So I want to give a shout out to Vesta Fresh. So thank you, Vesta Fresh. And I love the way Vesta Fresh did it. It's a classy way to actually send me a private message. That's not only respectful, but it shows what kind of person Vesta Fresh is. I mean, instead of just blowing up the comments for a mistake, because yeah, we all make mistakes. But before you go, I have a question for you. What's your favorite frozen Puerto Rican treat? Is it a piragua? Is it a limber? Is it un heladito de coco or de pacha or de... What's your favorite flavor? And do you like piña colada? With rum or without rum? Or is there something that I forgot? Did I forget any other frozen treats? Leave it in the comments. Leave it in the comments. For right now, thank you so much for spending part of your Sunday with me. I'll see you next Sunday. And until then, be good, be nice, have fun, get smart, read a lot because you gotta read. Travel whenever you can. It helps you understand where you live in. And remember, it's Sunday, so go to church because the world is on fire. And I still have the limber, so salud.